is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 382. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, fresh off of dinner and a basketball game, is Luis Scott-Vargas. LSV, how are you, sir?
I'm a little tired, but that's only because I was just dominant on the court.
Did you light him up?
I kind of did, actually.
Last week messed around and got a triple-double, huh?
Well, my 3-point shots were dropping, which was,
I'll
admit, a good amount of luck. But you know what? When I take ill-advised threes and I make them, it's just pretty great.
That is a game ender. I have played basketball with you a few times, and I can tell you that had you made any threes, it would have been a drastic change to the outcome of any games. That is savage. So we've got a really special show this week, and one that I love it when this special circumstance gets to happen, because I get to welcome back onto the show not just my current co-host, Luis Scott-Vargas, but also my original co-host, Ryan Spain. Ryan, welcome back to LR. It's always great to have you back on, man.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Fresh off of WotC. You worked all day. No basketball for you.
That's right.
But
I worked all day too.
Yeah, nobody believes that. You work at a game company.
Yeah, well,
so does Ryan.
That was a joke. So this is really great. So Ryan gets to come back on the show occasionally as a Wizards of the Coast employee. He gets to come on. You know, we kind of break him off from that and have him come on more as just good old Ryan Spain. He's not here for any official Wizards business. He's here as former LR co-host.
Passionate limited player
Ryan Spain. And we're going to get this chance to we're going to take a little bit of a walk down memory lane with Ryan, revisiting some of the original topics that Ryan developed and alongside with me, but primarily developed way back in the day. And we're also going to take a bunch of questions from our patrons that asked you. Wow, they had a lot of questions for you, Ryan. So we're going to get into those as well. And I figured it would probably be smart to let people know, since there is going to be some percentage of the population, who the hell are you?
Well, that's a good question. I'm this guy who started a podcast with Marshall Sutcliffe because we felt that nobody around was talking about how to get better at limited, and I'm a game designer, and one of the things I was trying to do is get a job at Wizards, and that happened while I was on the show, so that precluded me from continuing it, but it has also opened the doors for all the amazing co-hosts that followed. I'm a game designer.
Are all the co-hosts amazing, or would you break them into different categories?
I have categories, but they all do fall into the amazing bucket. I'll say that.
Wow,
That's diplomatic.
Interesting. Yeah, wow, that makes me think for sure. Yeah, and as I alluded to earlier, Ryan and I, when we started LR, we came up with a show from scratch. It just, none of this stuff existed. And it has evolved and changed a significant amount since then. But a lot of the core fundamentals that we based the show on were developed by Ryan and I, sitting there having talks on the phone and on IM and stuff, trying to figure out, well, if we're going to make a show, what should it be? Who should it serve? How should we serve it? And some of the basic principles that we wanted to talk about. We ended up carrying a significant number of principles from poker over because I was playing very seriously at the time, and Ryan was playing a lot too. And
that's kind of how we got going, right? It was like we talked so much Magic at the poker table that it drove Adam crazy, and But you made such leaps and bounds in your return to the game that was your suggestion. Is like, we're sitting around talking, and let's record it.
Yeah, exactly. And we worked our way through those initial few years together and kind of, started to solidify the show into the basic goals that we have for it, and that we're still here to do. The whole nuts and bolts spike approach, the decisions, not results. I mean, all of these things came from Ryan originally. And today we're going to get a chance to look at some of that and answer a bunch of your questions. So it's going to be a really fun one. And I wanted to bring Ryan on early because we're going to just bring him through the whole thing. I've got two co-hosts today. And let's get into it. First things before we get into everything, though, of course, we have to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. They are the absolute best place to go on the internet for everything you need Magic related. Don't go anywhere else. What are you even thinking? Channel Fireball is the place to get singles, sealed product. You can find supplies, and you get awesome free. That's right. No payments, no monthlies, no nothing. You just go there and you get free content from some of the best players in the world, including sweet draft videos. You can watch constructed videos. Like, this is the best way to watch somebody to learn how they really play and what their decision process is sort of sit over their shoulder and watch a video of them playing. But you can also read articles with deck lists, the latest and greatest deck lists, as well as sideboard guides and that kind of stuff if you've got a constructed tournament coming up. And that's all there on channelfireball.com for the taking. And hey, while you're there, full selection of cards, great service. And of course, they're going to make sure to get it out to you quickly. So really do recommend channelfireball.com. We love what they do there and how they help us out here on the show. You can also help the show out directly via Patreon. Simple website. You go to there and you can say, you know what? I like these guys. I want to give them some money. So you can say, I'll give them $1 per show. And when a show comes out, only when a show comes out, by the way, then it'll be like, okay, we'll take $1. And then we get, there's some processing and stuff like that, but then it goes to the show to help make it better and to help keep things moving along. And that's it. It's really easy. There's some cool bonuses you get, and it's really easy to set up, and there's no commitments. You do not have to say, well, for the next 6 months, you can just stop at any time you want. You can change the amount anytime you want. You have full agency over how you want to do it. Please do check that out for us. We appreciate it. Patreon.com/limited resources. Now, one of the bonuses that you get for being a patron is you get to be entered in for some giveaways. And one thing that we like to do is give away all the rares that we open up on the show. And even I got some foil and commons here. This is actually a pretty nice one. This one has the Snapcaster Mage that we opened. I think it was last week, maybe the week before. It's got a Craterhoof Behemoth. There's a Path to Exile in here. There's a foil Burning Tree Emissary. Who's excited about that? Walking Ballista. And Luis, do you remember this one? This was the one with Deep Spawn, which you somehow knew what it did. Liege of the Hollows.
Yeah, this is Fallen Empires.
Yeah, okay, but this is a flashback quiz for you. What does Power Matrix do?
This is I got this one right. This was like 4 mana artifact tap.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
Give a creature +1/+1 flying, first strike, and trample.
God, yeah, you did get it right. Anyway, this is no longer yours. This is going out to one lucky patron, and the winner is Nicholas Frank Bomarito, which sounds like something tasty, doesn't it? Luis, can I interest you in a hot, fresh Bomarito?
That sounds good to me.
I don't know what a Bomarito is.
Me neither.
I'm trying to figure it out.
But I'm into it.
I guess it's like a burrito, but like a bomb also in the same thing.
Yeah.
It just sounds like an amazing burrito, right?
Yeah, see?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, Ryan gets it. So yeah, Nicholas, thanks a lot for your support. We really do appreciate it. And by the way, Nicholas is from Colorado, so he's perhaps a neighbor of yours, Luis. And I'll be sending those cards out to you next week sometime, along with an LR deck box and a package of LR sleeves. Again, all you have to do is be a patron any level to get entered into those giveaways. And of course, we'll be adding to that today. I do have a new booster pack to open as well. Before we do that, though, the other perk, or one of the other perks you get as being a patron, is you get to put in a Patreon question of the week. And I've got one. It says, this is from Sigurd, who's actually asked one before, but Sigurd has such good questions. He said, hello, Marshall and Luis. As a somewhat experienced Magic player, I have settled with a playstyle I feel comfortable using. I'm not a huge fan of flickering cards or other sick brags. Not sure what he means exactly there, but he says, but I have noticed that I might be a bit worse than I thought on bluffing. I know there is something this is something you guys don't advocate us doing on a regular basis, as there are more, he says, call towers in Magic than the opposite. I love it. I think he meant calling stations.
Calling stations.
Yeah.
Which I know that. I don't even play Pokemon.
But that is fantastic. Call tower.
Is nice.
I might use that. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. He said, but he's right. There are more calling stations than the opposite. He says, but I still wish I was able to make my opponent think I had 3 counterspells in hand when all I have are islands. Any tips in making your playstyle more fluent, regardless of how many lands you have in your hand? He says, love the show, Sigurd. Luis, I wanted to ask you this one. I mean, I thought this is kind of an interesting question. We haven't had one quite like that. He's recognizing that we're saying, look, this isn't something that you super need to focus on. But he's like, look, I'm pretty happy with my play style, but being able to bluff something at least sometimes would be nice. How do I actually do it?
Part of it is don't think for different amounts of time. Like if you draw and think forever and then attack, whereas most of the turns you were just attacking without thinking for too long, your opponent's going to figure out something is different and try to figure out what it is and often come to the right conclusion if you're not trying to trick them. So, varying your range, as it were, of like, I'll think for a little bit and then I'll attack, or I'll think for a long time and then attack, and then doing it differently so that your opponent doesn't really get information. Like a good example of this is actually, especially if you have a counterspell in your hand. So you should have a general idea of things you'll counter and not counter, because there's nothing worse than your opponent playing like a 2-mana 2/2 and you're like, and you think and you're like, okay. And then most of your opponents are just going to be like, oh, I guess my opponent has a counter spell. Because they, have a pretty easy read there. So knowing that you're not going to counter that and just snap saying okay can conceal that you have a counter spell, and you just have to do a pretty good job of knowing, in advance what you want to do, so you spend an amount of time that doesn't reveal any information.
Yeah, I think that is the more superior bluff, because of course you also can do the other side of it, where you don't have the counter spell and you're like, okay, it resolves. The problem with that is that generally speaking, people will eventually play spells. And once they play one that they kind of know that you would counter, if you had a counter spell that you don't, they're just going to be like, oh, you don't have it, and then the floodgates are open. But both of those things are reasonable to try to at least put your opponent a little bit off balance with it.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's good to be aware of when the jig is up, right? Like if you've been successfully altering your opponent's behavior through deception, and then, like you said, okay, they thought I had a counter spell, and now they've cast their bomb, and I didn't counter it, and I don't have removal for it. The jig is up. Time to not expect that you're pulling anything off anymore.
Yeah, and not plan on getting any value from that. All right, good question. Thank you so much, Sigurd, for that. And that brings us to our Crack-A-Pack. I've got a Modern Masters 3 Crack-A-Pack here from Josh and Nora. Thank you so much, Josh and Nora. We appreciate that. Let's see what we get here. And we'll throw this in the new pile as well, so that's kind of cool. All right, first card out. By the way, I've been drafting this format a bit. Last week I did. I think I kind of got it figured out. They made the perfect format for me because it's everything I want to do. The problem is everybody's doing everything I want to do.
Yeah,
and nobody's doing anything else.
Get there.
I know, it's weird. Like there's enough, like you can just always play these value decks all you want, and everybody's playing them though. I keep having these Mistwraven Dinrova horror decks, and I'm just facing down like every creature they have is a card that they kind of want back in their hand anyway. I'm starting to rethink things.
At work today, I was saying Dinrova horror was my favorite card because it, like with so many tokens floating around, it's a 3-for-1, and since everything in the format is a 2-for-1, you got to find 3-for-1s to get down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got to be up.
All right, well, here's a 1-for-1. It's Grisly Spectacle. The 2 black instant destroys a non-artifact creature and then mills them for its power. Card's fine, but we're not first picking it. Talon Trooper, 3 mana, 2/3 flying, no. Sylvan Ranger. I don't hate that card. One in a green for a 1/1, and you can search up a basic when it enters a battlefield. None of these are first picks, though.
I like Sylvan Ranger the most out of the cards we've seen, but no, I would not first pick it.
Yeah, Grixis Slave Driver, whatever. It's fine card. Giant Baiting. No, still haven't played with that.
I'm not a big fan.
No, Mud Button Torch Runner. Cards actually impressed me a little more than I thought, but I still I don't play these cards, man. All right, here's a Core Hookmaster. You could do worse, but I'm still not taking it. Rewind. God, what an annoying card.
I always want that to be draw a card instead of untap my 4.
Well, yeah, I would trade that in, but still, it's still kind of good though. Is it Guildgate?
I would rather first pick Sylvan Ranger, I think, than is it Guildgate.
Not me, man. Yeah. I'm on Guildgate.
Wheel the gates.
I take them and wheel them.
Yes,
I think I average 8. Sundering Growth, no. All right, let's get to the uncommons. This is where things usually start to get a little bit better. Wayfaring Temple. That's the 1 green-white star. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you populate.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly a playable card in the tokens deck. It's good even, but
who the hell wants to play the tokens deck?
Yeah, I'm just going to start with Sylvan Ranger here.
Yeah.
If I'm not blinking, I'm not interested in making tokens.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, it's funny. I'm on Is It Guildgate, and you guys are on Sylvan Ranger. We're just like laughing at this Wayfaring Temple. I know. This card's actually been pretty good. I haven't actually had a chance to play it. It just kills my stuff occasionally. A Seal of Doom. 2 and a black enchantment. You can sack it to destroy target non-black creature, and it can't be regenerated.
Ooh, I would just take Seal of Doom.
That's a good card.
Yeah, it's totally first pickable. Although all these 1-for-1 removal spells are just you're a card behind when you cast that.
Yeah, totally. It also critically doesn't kill Dinrova horror, so
right.
We'll keep that in mind. All right, here's a good one. Thornscape Battle Mage, 2 and a green, 2/2 with kicker for red and or white. If you pay the red kicker, it does 2 damage to a creature or player, and if you pay the white kicker, it destroys an artifact. Card's good.
Thornscape Battle Mage I've been pretty impressed with. I think I would actually take it over Seal of Doom just because it kills signets.
Oh yeah, killing signets.
There's always targets. There's lots of 2 toughness out there, and you're going to end up with 4 colors anyway. Why not start with 3?
Yeah, word. I think I would still take the Seal of Doom if I was sitting down, but I respect the pick. The Battle Mage has really been good. Our foil is Seal of Primordium. No. Ooh, got a sweet rare. I'm definitely taking this one. We got Damnation.
Oh, yeah. Damnation is a great first one.
Windmill it. It's like Seal of Doom for all the stuff.
Now get every Falconwrath Noble you can.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious why Damnation's in the set. Did people even want a Damnation?
No, I don't think it was like something that people really cared about or complained about for literally years. Yeah, and then the WotC guy just has to sit in the corner. All right, so we're taking Damnation, and I'm putting that in the new giveaway pile. We'll start building that thing up. That's a nice start for that. I like that. Okay, why don't we get into to our main topic here, which is going to be talking to Ryan. And I think what we're going to do here, Ryan, I know you have some stuff that you want to say, and if you have any of that stuff that you want to just tackle, feel free to do so. But also, I think that a lot of the things are going to come out during the questions.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to lead you in with some of the questions. And if it brings up one of the topics that you had in mind, then go for it. And if you want to weave one of those in anywhere, feel free. No problem. This is a free flowing conversation here. Nothing too.
Let's do it.
Too stodgy. Oh, actually, I had one thing. I'm sorry. I did want to say one thing from last week, and you actually corrected me on this, Ryan, and a listener on Twitter as well, which is I had mentioned that for Magic Online players, that Magic Online will save your draft decks for you, and you can play them against other people in the casual room, just without having to rebuy in for drafts if you're a little bit short on tickets or your budget's a little short for that week. I was wrong on part of this. If you're in a league, Magic Online does not automatically save your draft deck. So my apologies there. They won't just be there automatically, but you can still save them. You can save them out into your collection. Is that right, Rye?
Yeah, if you right-click on an empty spot of your deck builder, context menu comes up, and you can select Export to Collection and name it, and then it'll end up in your freeform decks. Okay,
so there you go. So apologies for that. I didn't know that was different for leagues, but I'm not surprised. Those old deck lists did kind of add up.
We had to put the brakes on storing every single deck that was saved out.
Yeah, but that's fine. I think that just if you have one that you like, save it out, or even just save them all out if you want, and then again you can play them. All right, let's get into this now. After we got that out of the way, so let's just go right into it. RH4D4 says, "Hi Ryan, what's your opinion on the evolution of limited gameplay from your first days as an LR co-host to the present sets? As a designer, what kind of ideas did you bring or wanted to bring to limited Magic design?"
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, what I love about the evolution of Magic design for limited since I was on the show has been the acknowledgement that removal at low rarities needs to be clunkier and more expensive. It was not interesting to constantly pick Doomblades in the M whatever era, and so I think that is something you guys have noticed and is absolutely true. But I think makes the draft more interesting. I like having to debate whether this reasonable creature is better or worse than this reasonable removal. I think recognizing that depth in limited formats is largely going to be around finding the niche things to do after the basic stuff is played out a little for you. So the build around uncommons, the effort to put them in, I love. As you guys have also noted on the show, it's not always successful. I don't think build around uncommons are put into sets as a intentional trap. Sometimes they become them when they don't play out quite as successfully as we intended. But I think that level of synergy, like my favorite stuff recently has been when there's a Johnny angle to the limited format. We got to be careful because that tends to increase complexity. But I think having prizes and playthings for Johnny in limited is an excellent evolution, and something that's you've been seeing more and more of in modern limited formats. And honestly, I also love the master sets. The whole cube space is interesting too, and I think the masters sets have captured this space in between booster draft and cube that I think is really sweet.
Yeah. That the cube stuff has really come a long way. I mean, when we first started doing the show, cube was pretty obscure still, and certainly wasn't recognized by Wizards of the Coast yet. It wasn't on Magic Online or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's been a big step. Next question comes from Jonah Lipton, who says, "Hi Ryan, I'm a huge fan of yours as well as LR's. It was your discussions with Marshall that really helped me get into Magic and ignited a real love of limited in me. As far as the question is concerned, if you had to design a Planeswalker card inspired by you and Marshall, what colors would it be, and what would their abilities look like?"
Wow. Design a Planeswalker top-down Marshall Ryan on the spot on the air.
Yeah, maybe you don't have to give us the numbers, but
Well, let's see. Let's start to explore this. I mean, obviously, there has to be some sort of simian aspect to this card, so I'm going to call it at least partially green. It's probably going to be an and card. You know, although we've never really put two entities on a Planeswalker, have we?
I don't know. I don't keep track of that stuff.
Yeah, maybe we have to be like, what is the result when Marshall and Ryan are put into the teleporter and come out merged? In which case, I don't know, it'd be an ape that.
Oh no!
I don't know. You got to make fun of me now. Like what what's my side of this equation?
I don't know. The question's for you, man. I'm not the card designer here.
I think what I would really want to do, though, is make sure it was a Planeswalker that played well and limited without just being super busted.
Yeah, like that's what came to mind for me too. Is I would want to see what an uncommon Planeswalker would look like.
Yeah, something, or maybe that level of power, but still.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like a card that you'd put up against some of the better uncommons in the set, but that it wouldn't be absurd. I mean, this is probably a little better than that, but like Dovinbon, right, wasn't a card that you played and just immediately won the game. But imagine if you notched that down just a little bit more. What would that's the Planeswalker I want.
Just a little value.
Yeah.
But nothing oppressive. Color-wise, I've always said I thought I was Izzet for a long time, and then there was something happened where I got so outraged at the injustice of some situation at work that I was like, oh man, I'm Azorius.
You're Azorius.
It's like I had this moment of like, I can't deny it. I'm Azorius, but I have my jacket has a Dimir lining though.
I think anyone could be Dimir because no one ever says they are.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Or if you do, then you're not, right?
Wait, you say you are though, Luis.
Well,
you're just bad at being Dimir.
I think I'm more Azorius. I value like order, structure, truth, those sorts of things.
Yeah, see,
how the hell did I end up being Simic?
And then, but when order, structure, and truth doesn't quite support my end goals, that's when a little Dimir might slip.
I see. Wow.
Well, yeah, I'm lying about those things.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we'll let you continue working on that.
Yeah, let me give me more time.
Yeah. So Adrian says, "Hi Ryan, I'm curious about your thoughts on this topic as a game designer." This is kind of interesting. And Luis, I'd like your opinion on this as well. He says, "Games like chess and Go have been around for many hundreds of years, remain incredibly popular," which I would contend, by the way. "And the theory behind those games is still under active development in spite of literally hundreds of books being published on them every year. And yet people think a new Magic format is solved," he puts that in quotes. He or she puts that in quotes, in 6 months. Do you think Magic as a game has fundamentally less depth than these, or is something else happening? If we actually had Marshall's, and I'm going to put that in quotes for Adrian, theoretical time-traveling supercomputer, do you think it would tell us that most of what we think about what we know about Magic theory is actually correct or not?"
Wow.
Yeah. So one thing we should preface this is that I don't agree with the premise fully from Adrian. I don't think that there are literally hundreds of books being published on Go and chess at this point. I don't think that they're incredibly popular. I mean, I think that they're still, widely played, and that's a good thing. But, this stuff isn't exactly on TV every day. I think that in some ways, some of these games are either approaching or have been solved, at least by computers, which I think is interesting. And I also think that it's hyperbole when Magic players say that a Magic format is solved after 6 months. I just think that it's more that it's been settled to the point of where it's going to settle rather than it's at its like absolute peak. But still, Adrian does bring up an interesting point in that, we do tend to think that like, well, standard stale, standard solved, it's where it's going to go. And then people kind of wait for new cards to come out basically to fix that. Yet Magic is often given the title of one of the deepest games, right? And this is where I think Adrian's question is really interesting, which is, Adrian asked, does Magic fundamentally have less depth in these games, or is it something else? And it's like, it can't be that, right? I mean, Magic is way more complicated than those games, isn't it?
No, yeah, I don't think that it's a matter of that depth, that the ability to be solved equates to a lack of depth. Mm-hmm. I think Magic is a far more complex game, and it's constantly changing. So in a way, it is never solved. Have you solved Amonkhet? It's not solved, right? So there's always something new to figure out. But the nature of the complexity of the pieces and the wide band of power level in those pieces creates scenarios, especially if you've got humans designing cards under deadlines and shipping them out, and there's only so much perfection you're going to get in the balance of things. And so, yes, I think standard formats are solved. And I think a large part of what Eric Lauer and his team and Aaron Forsyth and his team are trying to do is extend that as long as possible through lots of play testing and lots of iteration. But the nature of these complex pieces with a range of power level just creates something more solvable than these games that kind of live forever in abstraction. And like you say, I don't think I think chess is probably more solved than Magic.
Yeah, I do too.
Again, because you got to. It's going to change the next day. And chess is not going to.
Now, Adrian also asked about the time traveling supercomputer, but I wanted to get Luis's take before you tackle that part. When you think of games like chess and Go, Luis, and compare them to Magic, what are your general thoughts on like the complexity and solvedness of them?
Well, I think part of it is that chess and Go aren't changing. Their rules are not going to change. That's, I think, pretty set in stone at this point. So people who want to get an edge in chess and who want to study chess and Go, they work within that to try to develop whatever they can. And there's still edges to be gained, it seems like. Magic changes so frequently that, yes, I think that even though like this current standard format where we have last Grand Prix has 6 Mardu vehicles decks in the top 8, right? It's pretty solved, I think. Like there, 4 color Sahelian Mardu vehicles are the top 2 decks by a pretty wide margin. There's a couple other decks, but when we say solved, if we knew that the format wasn't changing forever, for 10 years, for 100 years, people would still be looking to see whether you should play 3 veteran motorist and 1 walking ballista, or 4 veteran motorist, or 0 veteran motorist, or every single detail. So yeah, there is room there, but it's just not that feasible to mine that space, because why would you spend 40 hours trying to decide whether you want 3 or 4 of a card when you could basically get the same win percentage by not doing that? The difference is we just know new things are going to come out. Modern Masters is out now, so people are paying attention to that. Or you play a different format or whatever. If there, all of a sudden no new Magic cards are ever made, the format's never changed, you'd see people innovating even more. It's just not worth it to get those marginal edges. Whereas in chess and Go, what else are you going to do? You do it. Like if you want to get an edge, you still have to study and figure out potentially new stuff. And maybe at some point there isn't, but it seems like it hasn't hit that yet. I think Magic is very complicated. I don't know necessarily if it's more or less complicated. I think the fact that Magic has variance and incomplete information to a much greater degree, does keep us coming back, and that is a big deal.
Ryan, I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about the time traveling supercomputer in general, so this is probably a good time to do that. And then also, Adrian's question was, if we did have that, do you think it would tell us that most of what we know about magic theory is actually correct or not? And maybe you want to hit that up in any order.
Yeah, I think so. Well, certainly the time traveling supercomputer would, because that's the point of it. And I had been talking to Marsh about stuff.
No. What he meant was, do you think it would say that we were right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It would tell us what the answer is, but do you think do you think that human beings at this point in magic are roughly on the right track, or do you think it would be like, no?
I think it depends on what you're talking about. Is it correct that 1723 is the proper default ratio for land? I think so, but I think that's all kind of almost solvable through our mathematical capabilities.
Through our actual computer?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just that I think we'd be right on many things and wrong on some things. I think right on most things in terms of a general theory. I think the theories that LR and other magic content creators contribute to the group understanding of this game are largely correct. The concept of the supercomputer for me, and why I think why I wanted to revisit it is like it's a little bit clunky. There was one Timothy Morgan wrote in, actually, and I still get emails forwarded to me from the show sometimes, and he points out, like, do you even really need the time traveling part? Like, aren't you really just saying a supercomputer figuring out all possible configurations of the results? And in a sense, yes, right? Like,
that sounds so much lamer, though.
Right. Well, or it's that I was trying to, the main point of this concept is that I want people to think in terms of that there is a perfect play, that there is a correct play. Because I hear people talking about a play, and two smart, knowledgeable players disagree, and you can hear them sometimes say, we're both right, or there's no way to tell, there's no right answer here. Like, and I disagree. I think there is a right answer, and that's what this concept is about. But Timothy points out, like, if we can solve tic-tac-toe, right? And so all a solved magic concept is just a computer powerful enough to take the tiny decision tree of tic-tac-toe and expand it to this huge decision tree that is magic. The reason I pulled time traveling into it is because I always liked the flavorful idea of kind of like a Commander Data type of humanoid supercomputer whose goal is not to win the magic tournament. His goal is to exhaustively understand all possible results of this magic tournament. And so he's doing this by going back in time over and over again with infinite time, patience, and computational power to literally play with every possible deck configuration, with every sequencing decision, and with and against all possible shuffles, right? And so it's just the idea that if you're in some magic tournament and you imagine this Commander Data time traveling, whatever situation you're in, he's experienced, and he knows. He's done this. He's made every possible choice based on every possible, and knows it, the decision tree down to the ground. And of course, that's so impossible that that's why magic is so unsolvable. Is that's just this ridiculous concept.
But that's what we're kind of striving for, right?
Right. And so, but I do regret. It's funny and more flavorful, but I wish time traveling supercomputer had a nice short name, and I just left time traveling out and just tried to get to that core concept of, we're talking about there is a correct play. And I actually do want to, Sam Black was talking about correct plays. I think it was on a Walking the Plains video one time that I thought was great, because he was saying, even if you said that you established what the perfect mechanical play is in a given moment, are you supposed to do it in 5 seconds or 20 seconds? So he's getting into the human side of the equation, where the supercomputer isn't. I'm not really looking at that aspect. I'm just trying to look at the at the core mechanics. But you can even imagine Commander Data trying it in 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, and seeing if that has an effect on people. And who knows? Maybe the correct Magic play is actually doing a bunch of things to get into your opponent's head that I would never want to do.
Yeah,
it's not fun or whatever. So for me, it's just about the straight Magic decisions.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting because, what you're ultimately talking about, it actually comes up in poker. We were mentioning that a little while ago, but, people talk about playing a style, they call it GTO or game theory optimal. And this is a style where you're basically trying to be that. You're trying to be the time traveling supercomputer where you put yourself in a situation where the way that you play the game, optimizes over the long term. Right. But the counter argument or the other style that people try to play is what they call an exploitative style, where they're trying to look at the exact situation in front of them rather than thinking of it of all hands of all time. They're thinking about it in terms of, well, what will this person do right now? And I'm going to try to, change what I would, change my game plan around what I think the other person's going to do because I think that they're making mistakes. And
I will say that
go ahead.
What you're getting to is how I think the best of the best get an edge. Like, it's not just like there are people who are very good and among the best players who do their best and do a pretty good job of making the time traveling supercomputer play.
Mm-hmm.
But the complexity, the part that Ryan doesn't actually want to get into, the part that you're describing, Marshall, is making less than optimal plays that actually become optimal because your opponent is going to get exploited by them.
Exactly. I have an example for this, by the way.
Ooh, examples.
I mean, I can just translate like basically what a poker hand would be for Magic, which is, Luis, you're sitting at the Pro Tour and you're playing against a player, and maybe you know them, maybe you don't, but you're sitting across from them, you've had a chat with them, and you've been playing. Let's say it's game 3. You've been paying attention to how they play and all that kind of thing. If you were playing GTO or time traveling supercomputers mode, and you had a play where your opponent could have a counter spell, you would have a rough idea of the percentage of the time that they could have the counter spell, and you would then make your decision on how important it was for the spell that you had in your hand to resolve, and you would come up with an answer of, yes, I should go ahead and try to cast it, you would just cast it. If the numbers came in 1% in your favor or more, you would cast it. If they did not, then you wouldn't. But I know that as a Magic player, if you were sitting, actual Luis Scott-Vargas sitting in that table and looking across at your opponent, you would have a feel for how they played the game, how they look. Maybe you'd have a little bit of a live read on them where like they look nervous or they're twitchy, or, maybe they reach for their 2 planes and you're like, well, I know that means you probably don't have it. You maybe got a tell on something like that. Maybe it was because of the way the game was played prior. But in any case, if you in your head go, I'm really pretty certain that this person has a counterspell here, even if mathematically on average they shouldn't, then you will make a play that plays around that counterspell where the computer would not. The computer would just jam it and say, over the course of 1 billion trials, I will come out ahead on this play. And they're not taking into account that exploitative nature of it, where you're looking at it saying, I can just tell by the way that this person's played that they've left up this counterspell, and I'm gonna change my game plan around that.
Yeah, it's interesting because if the time traveling supercomputer doesn't take into account the opponent, then how could it possibly be thinking it makes the correct play? The difference is that actually factored in? Do you just run a bunch of trials? Maybe it's even better than we think.
Well, so that is kind of the interesting part about the GTO, the game theory optimal style, is that in many ways it does not factor in the opponent. It assumes, probably some level of competency, but basically the strategy is, if I do the things the way that I do the things, you cannot beat it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what you do, like over the long term. Again, on any given hand, they can do it. But, a good way to think about this, at least from a poker perspective, is, what we call balancing. And, I don't want to get too deep into this, but basically when you play poker, most people think that you look at your hand and then you try to figure out what hand the other person has. And that's not the way that high level poker players approach it anymore. Instead, you think about the range of hands, all of the hands that you could make an action with, and that you would too. This has to be actually true. Like, you have to know ahead of time that in this position for this much money facing this action, I would raise with this hand, this hand, this hand, this hand, this, and just list them off. And, there's tools online that can show which hands you would want to do this with. And you're basing this off of what you think that the average player or a player would do. And you're trying to balance that out over the long term. So you're rarely playing the exact hand that you have in your hand. Instead, you're playing a range of hands, and then you're trying to mix up in a sometimes random and sometimes more balanced out way, saying, well, 75% of the time I will bet this hand on the river or bet this range on the river, and 25% of the time I won't. And a computer would be able to do that flawlessly. Humans tend to not be as good with that kind of stuff, and that's a part of the big challenge of it. But when you're actually doing that, it means that you don't have to think about what your opponent's doing nearly as much as when you play the other style. Because if somebody bluffs you and you have a balanced range, meaning that sometimes you have a really good hand, sometimes you don't have a really good hand, and you call a certain percentage of the time that says, whatever they have, I'm going to still make money, then you can make money over the long term as long as you employ that strategy correctly. It's just very difficult to do, in real life, and you have to develop the strategy before you even sit down at the table. But it is interesting because you'll hear people that play that style. They'll be like, dude, you're getting bluffed. And they're just like, I don't really think about it like that, because I don't want to have to guess at what my opponent's doing. They might be bluffing, they might not. But if I just have this very balanced, well thought out strategy, I'm going to be able to just, to win anyway, because, sometimes they're bluffing, sometimes they're not. And I'll let them figure that part out, which is just completely counterintuitive to the way that most people think about poker and in fact, Magic as well. So it's interesting because I think that there's a lot of like theory here, to dig out. But I just wish I could be even remotely close to a time traveling supercomputer as far as being able to, have an idea of where we're going. Because I think that's the most enticing thing about Magic is that since we don't have that, we don't, at least, the way it looks currently, we won't for quite a while be able to actually know if we were right or wrong on any given play.
Yeah. That your poker story reminded me that there was a famous heads-up poker game between this billionaire Andy Beal and a bunch of poker pros. For insane stakes. There's a book about it. But Andy Beal wanted to reliably change up his give his balanced play, right? And what he did is had a pocket watch or a watch on the table with a second hand. And when he came to a play where he was like, I want to do this 25% of the time, he would glance at his watch, and if the second hand was in the first 15 seconds to the first quarter of the circle, he would do it. So it was just interesting that he would use his the second hand on his watch to help apply to help randomize his play. So
it was very astute of him to do that, although it didn't work out too well for him in the end. That I did read that book too. That was really good. All right, let's move on to the next question here. From Carrie Malsom, who says, "Hi Ryan, I started after you left, but I've got back, have gone back and listened to several of the episodes you did. I appreciate what you have done to help define what LR is. My question for you is how you recommend improving someone's ability to understand the format and relative values of cards for someone who only has the time or money to draft a few times a month. I find myself drafting a set for the 6th or 7th time and facing people with 30 plus trophies in the leagues. Thank you."
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think being a listener to this show is a great start. We
do talk about the new sets a lot.
Right. So building up your tool set for card evaluation and then hearing the insights of the players who are getting in more reps and who are just better players than you are is a great way to find that edge to get yourself a few drafts ahead, even though you're not able to do it maybe as much as some others. That's really in many ways what this show is about, is giving people the tools to do exactly that. So when you can come in and apply a vanilla test to something and realize that this creature is fine because you've done that, or you have reasons for why you've picked the cards you have, and you have the ability to adjust those assessments as things change. It's very hard though, because we've from the very beginning said that there is no replacement for playing.
Yeah.
But I would say that if it's a matter of money, then watching streams, watching draft videos, listening to more content is definitely the way to replace the lack of reps. When it comes to time, it's just the most valuable thing in the world, and you just are ultimately going to have to decide whether this is where you want to apply your time or not. I look at life as a one big time to happiness conversion game, and if you don't have the time for Magic, that's ultimately a choice you're making that's going to make you a little bit worse. But I think you're getting the edge back that you can by seeking out things like podcasts and strategy help.
Michael Moore says, Ryan, this might seem like a softball question, but it's important to me. Do you believe that Limited is the purest form of Magic? Not necessarily inherently superior to other formats, but is it the way of playing the game that most eliminates factors other than cards and the ability to identify and execute the best line of play?
I certainly think it is the most skill testing format. What you mean by purity can vary. One of the things that I think there's a lot of things that make Limited my favorite, but actually one of them is actually the creative, which is that first, Constructed tends to focus on the top end, like 5% of cards in a format. I don't know, Luis would know better than I, but you use so few cards that are available.
6.3%.
Whatever, the time traveling supercomputer just showed up.
Yeah, there he goes. I believe it. It's probably something like that. But the beauty of Limited, and especially, another thing that I would say, to go back to that very first question, things that I'm happy or the ways that Limited has changed, the playable card count in packs has gone way up. I don't know if you've drafted like Kamigawa block recently, but you're just like, you get to pick 7 and you're like, there's nothing left. I do like the depth that we have now. I don't know. I've lost my train. What was
well, we were just talking about the purity.
Sorry.
Your favorite thing about Limited, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because so anyway, I was saying you use more cards, so you get to play with more cards in the set. And specifically, the flavor of the world is just excellent. I think our creative department is incredible, and there's the best way to experience these amazing worlds that are being created is to play Limited, because all the cards are from that world, and you're seeing a wide variety of them. But in terms of that's not really what you're asking. You're asking about the purity of the gameplay or the spikiness of it. And yeah, I think that Limited is the ultimate place for spike. But I also acknowledge that Limited prowess and constructed prowess do come with the different skill sets that make you great at one or the other. There's crossover, of course. That's why, but you know what I mean. That the mindset you have about solving a constructed format is a lot different, because you're looking for consistency. You're trying to find the thing that's happening again and again, as opposed to Limited, where you're MacGyvering it and just on the fly trying to do your best. What would the time traveling supercomputer do? And I just think that's more challenging and more fun.
You agree, Luis? Do you think that that Limited is a purest form of Magic?
I again don't think that the purest form of Magic is a phrase that means much to me, because that's just very subjective. But what I do think that Limited tests your innate ability at Magic more. So if that's what you want to say is purity, sure, then yes, because Limited is so much more, like Ryan said, you're using so much, a larger percentage of the cards. The situations you come in to contact with are so novel. Like when you play a match of Limited, you're playing games you've never played before. You have situations and interactions that you just haven't seen before. When you play Constructed, and this is coming from someone who's played a lot of both formats, Constructed is more about learning what every card is supposed to do and then using those cards to do those things.
Yeah.
When I play my 70th game of vehicles against Saheeli, I know how the games go. That game is probably going to be within 80% of a game I played just a couple hours ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so you're learning how to beat that, and that's a thing. That's a thing that rewards good. The building the proper deck and knowing what the matchup actually looks like and what matters. Those are definitely skills. I don't think people who are good at constructed aren't good at Magic, but I think people who are good at limited are better at Magic in its purest form. So I guess that would be the purity part.
He gotcha.
Yeah, and I love. Yeah, and I love the level playing field as well. The limited was a revelation to me of like, wow, this is how we avoid the arms race. Because in the 90s, I was playing around the kitchen table, and actually it's funny. This was like in late Ice Age, and limited wasn't even a thing yet. But our little play group was tired of feeling like, well, I can go spend it, or I can lose. And so we did what we called the bubble, which was early sealed. We each got the same amount of product, and we called it a bubble. And we had these trade sessions. You could trade within the bubble and everything. But I look back on that with fondness, because it's like, yeah, we kind of figured out even in 94, 95 range that if we could figure out how to even the playing field, everybody would be happier, and we were.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind when we're talking about like constructed versus limited from my mentality is that when you're a limited player, when you're going to play limited, you're concerned with the unknown, right? You're trying to prepare yourself as well as you can for what you're going to open, what the situations are going to be, and there's a very wide array of things that you're going to need to prepare for. When you're a constructed player, your concern is the known. You're actually working your way as hard as you can towards knowing every interaction and everything that you can get. And it's, a somewhat attainable goal. If you grind, it's like you're kind of checking things off the list as you work your way towards sort of knowing the format. With limited, it's almost never the case that you're just preparing yourself just to know everything. You're more dealing with theoretical sort of structural stuff, and I find that more interesting for sure.
I will say, if we're talking about purity, card availability does not fit into the scheme. That doesn't. If you're talking about pure Magic,
that's a good way to put that. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is funny though, because you guys both mentioned the subjectivity of the question, which I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, I saw somebody, cast like Time Walk, and then it was like Flusterstorm twice, and there was all the, there's 30 things on the stack, and somebody said, well, this is pure Magic, and I'm like, well, I guess, it's like, I guess it is different for everybody.
The phrase I like best whenever someone gets like, someone dredges their deck in a mana-less dredge deck, or someone gets locked out with a workshop deck or whatever. It's, Storm goes off on turn 2. It's like Magic, just like Garfield intended.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Not exactly gray ogres slamming into each other,
So I will say this, for whatever it's worth, and, the listeners can again determine what they think it is, because it's all subjective. The professional Magic players who are the best at limited are regarded as being better at Magic than people who are better at constructed. That's just fact. So there is more respect for that among the people who you would consider the best of the best at Magic.
Yeah.
So, and Marshall, you've seen that too.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. I've seen those conversations happen multiple times. I think people know it, All right, let's move on. Next question is from Tony Levesque, who says, on the personal end, Ryan, how is this family? How's your family doing? How's the puppy dog doing? And by the way, we've got Gleekin that says Rocket Report. Zach Levine says Meta Nightmare here. You remember Meta. Still listening after all these years. 2 questions. First, how's Rocket? I'll ask you the other question in a minute. But as you can see, people want to know how Rocket's been and how you're doing.
I'm doing good. I have a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. That's exciting times. It's great though. Time flies so fast, and I'm trying to make the most of it. I've been doing a lot of cooking with my daughter and a lot of gaming with my son. And
Tony actually asked if you still played any two-headed giant tournaments with your son.
No, his interest in Magic waxes and wanes based in a lot of ways on whether friends of his are into it. And it's funny because he gets so inoculated to the excitement of cards and stuff that he's his friends don't understand why he isn't just constantly swimming around in a pool of Magic cards like Scrooge McDuck or something.
Right.
so he's not really interested in going to stores and stuff, but we'll bust out decks that are reasonable matchups, and he'll play when friends come over and that's what they want to do. Rocket is he's an old man now. I mean, I guess he's middle aged by dog standards, closing in on 7 coming up. He's actually kind of a jerk, if I'm honest.
He does have Annihilator 1.
He does have Annihilator 1. He is a home security enthusiast of great renown. I'm
using context here. Rocket is like a dog.
Yes, Rocket is my 20-pound Min Pin Rat Terrier mix, whose greatest accomplishment in life is he has never, ever let the mailman actually break into the house. He turns that mailman away at the door every single day.
Oh, man. Staunch defender. Yeah. Oh, I love Rocket, man. Rocket's gas.
Yeah. If you only meet him for 5 minutes, you're going to hate him. But if you give it like to minute 7 and he realizes you're not trying to murder everybody in the house, then he's awesome.
There you go. Meta also wanted to know if you think you've improved as a player since joining WotC, or are you now focused on other things? Yeah, since the game is your job.
Here's the thing: I am not. My win percentage has gone down. My enjoyment of Magic has gone up, and my ability to play the time to happiness conversion game while playing Magic has gone up. I admitted this on the show when I was a host that it might not be obvious to people who hear me in this context or don't know me in a long time gaming context, but I am a really emotional gamer and really tilted easily for a lot of my Magic career. And
same.
And I've made great strides there. I'm not perfect. My hero is Mike Turian. I've never seen a guy who can play at the level he does with the total apparent lack of concern afterwards about the result. He's just totally comfortable with did what he could, and there was the result. It
is normally baffling.
Yeah, normally people who are Hall of Fame players are there because they care so dang much about the game that they get very passionate about the results. And so Mike is my mentor in this, and my mantra now is lose like Turian. When I'm playing a game and I can feel the tilt seeping in, I remind myself how lucky am I that this is like the bad thing that's happening to me today, so I think part of that has been that that going to WotC has removed the stakes, right? I'm not I'm not playing for high stakes anymore, and that has allowed me to ratchet down my just the passion I have about whether or not I'm winning this game or not.
Sure.
I'm much more apt to take it easy on that front.
By the way, you go ahead, Luis.
I'm just going to say this almost feels like a sign-off topic, but stakes are so important for making you care. It doesn't even have to be big. It has to be there, though. Like it is very different when you're playing it. Like if you're playing a playtesting game and you just don't even care, but you're just like, all right, I got to do this to playtest. But if someone walked by and is like, hey, let's bet $5 on who wins, like that's just completely different. Or if you're like,
it's weird. Even if the $5 is meaningless to you in the big picture,
Right. Like if you're trying to I don't know, make a ball of duct tape into a wastebasket from 30 feet away. And Marshall,
look, you don't have a perfect record with this, okay?
All I'm saying is none of us would care whether I made or missed it, but then we put money out of it. All of a sudden, that's all we care about.
Yeah,
right.
Well.
And that's powerful. You have to know how to use that. So,
and now that I think about it, part of it is what was the time in R&D contributing to play testing of new sets, where when you go into R&D from being a very spiky player, you have a transition to make because despite the spike density in R&D. The goal of playing when you're in R&D is not to win. Nobody cares if you won or not. People only care whether you have something useful to say about whether it was fun or not. And and that shifting.
I don't know if that's entirely true. I disagree with that.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm looking at it from limited play. The FFL.
Yes, it is certainly much more true and limited. Yes.
Yeah, I should make that, because I basically never played in the FFL. I didn't do any constructed testing at R&D.
Constructed is all the thing you said, but you also need to see if things are broken.
Yes, exactly. I guess what I'm saying, like even in constructed, the mentality though is like, time is money, and if you are going into the tank over a decision that's going to be a 0.5% shift on the Pro Tour, you go into the tank, right? You gotta come up with that.
Oh, yeah.
In playtesting, even for constructed, it's more important to get the games in and get an idea of the matchup rather than chasing every little edge. And
for sure. You also are fine with takebacks and stuff like that. Like you're not trying to determine, like you said, in that case, you're not trying to determine who wins. You are trying to determine power level. So like, this is presumably where you find out, whether Emrakul should cost 13 or 17. But you are concerned with experience, and you're not concerned with going the tank to eke out the 2%. This is exactly the things we talk about on the podcast of how to get that 2%. You don't care about when you're playing.
That's funny. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that play testing with that mentality for many years now also impacts my play at work. Although, we do these when a new set comes out on Magic Online, there are employee events that we play on Magic Online, and the internal prize support for it is great. So it's that the stakes, right? So the most serious I get about playing Magic right now is actually the Magic Online employee pre-release tournaments, because you get sweet prize support for winning, and it's a great avenue, a great way to express my spiky side. In
the building, yeah.
In the building, or at home, I can play at home and yell at the screen too. And
yeah. Well, so speaking of that, our next question is related, and you just touched on this. It's from Adam, who says, "Hey Ryan, so I hear there are players out there that have a difficult time with variants. Yes. They've drafted and built the best deck for their seat, but sometimes the shuffler won't cooperate. Rather than accepting that variance occurs, they go on full-blown monkey tilt. Any recommendations for a player who occasionally, or not so occasionally, lapses into a fury of tilt?" Thanks. You said that it helped you to kind of put yourself into perspective, but I mean, does that really work? Like if something really bad happens to me and I go, I'm a pretty lucky person overall, like somehow it doesn't just make you feel better right away.
What it does is makes me feel better faster and lets me get a hold of myself. And Adam's joking around with me because he is one of those guys who has experienced the entire range of my gaming emotions over the course of our friendship. And
you figured out which Adam it is, did you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there were some clues there. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I do is rant at Adam, right?
Yeah.
And he has been a kind of another kind of Mike Turian for me in that way as well, because he's also like that. He very rarely tilts, and he's just one of those guys who seems really aware that he's a lucky guy and doesn't let the result of a game tilt him too much. So I don't know. Surrounding yourself with good role models is a great way to go at him. And like I said, you're never trying to come up with the thing that like, oh, now that I figured this out, tilt is gone. I'm just done. All I'm trying to do is not get mad as fast and cool down faster. And you chip away at that little by little, and gradually over time, you just get a lot better. Like it's actually more prevalent. The dramatic shift is more visible in my poker game than anything else. Marsh could tell you stories of me storming out of a game because I was just furious at having lost a hand. I played it perfectly and it didn't go my way, kicking trash cans and making a scene that's just, I'm embarrassed about it now. And then I was playing poker last night at Adams, and we were playing some of these odd games like Raz, which any poker player knows is just this game that's designed to just punch you in the gut. That's what it's designed to do.
Oh, yeah.
Like to give you this perfect looking hand and then just wreck it. And I was getting my perfect Raz hands wrecked left and right, and people kept looking at me, waiting for me to be. And I was just like, yeah, what? Like, it's funny. I'm fully cooled down on poker now. Like I don't think there's a possible result in poker that could get me upset that was just based on how the cards fell.
Yeah.
But I'm still working on Magic.
Yeah, Magic can be a tough one.
We have slightly different styles.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'm actually pretty good at not tilting it either now. Stuff bothers me, but it takes so much these days it has to add up in like a really weird sequence for me to really just be like, all right. And then all I do is stop. But I had to work on that too. Zach says, well, for some reason he thinks Luis isn't here this week, but, no, Zach, you get Luis as well. He says, Siggy said something that has stuck with me. He said, don't put creatures.
Did I not have to show up this week?
No.
This is my week off?
This
you
is a
can take off
mandatory
if you
show.
want.
All right, I guess I'll catch you guys next week.
We just hear the thing click. Yeah. He says, Siggy said something that stuck with me. He said, you don't put creatures in your deck with no text, aka flavor text only cards, is not a card you want to put in your limited pile, which I don't remember him saying that, but maybe he did. It says, when it comes to limited Magic, power and toughness, or as Marshall would say, keyword big, seems good. How do you approach card evaluation in limited these days? Cheapest card, most generically powerful, consistently can cast it, mana curve. What are some of the things that go into that for you? And Zach also has said, P.S., we in the community hope you all understand how much we appreciate your contributions and hope your wives understand the gravitas of what you do. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks. A lot of the success of the show is largely because throughout 7 years now, the even as things like power of removal changes and the density of quality cards changes, the fundamentals we go over again and again are still matter and still work. I think one of the big things about card evaluations is understanding how to adjust them. I've had listeners say to me in the past, you say not to be results oriented and focus on the correctness of your decisions, but then you also say at set reviews that, hey, these are just first impressions and that evaluations are going to change with experience. And so isn't changing evaluation of a card after a couple of data points being rotty? And I want to stress that you listen to the show, you apply the rules of thumb, the heuristics that we go over to help you make decisions with lower brain effort, basically, to get into good habits. And you use that knowledge to make an assessment about a card. When you change that assessment, to make it not rotty, it has to be because you understood why you assessed the card the way that you did originally. You have your list of reasons. Here's why I think it's good, that its base stats for its cost are efficient and it's not a drawback, is a little bonus. So that's good. But then you take it into battle, and it's proper to change your assessments based on only a handful of data points when those data points and those experiences give you concrete reasons that something has changed about that initial evaluation. This is a little bit of a throwback example, but I remember that when Brian was a co-host, you guys did the Theros set review and were pretty down on Bestow in general, and in particular, really trashed Hopeful Eidolon.
Oh, yeah.
And Hopeful Eidolon is a 1-mana 1/1 with lifelink, but it's got Bestow, so it can be cast for 3 and a white as an aura that gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 in lifelink. And then if that creature dies, or if it's countered, whatever, it falls off and becomes a 1/1 lifelink creature. And I had been playtesting this set and knew how strong this bestow mechanic was and how strong Hopeful Eidolon was, and was listening to you and Brian talk about it, and you had lots of great reasons why you were not impressed with this card. It was neither side of it seemed that impressive. A 1/1 lifelink for 1 is not a card you would play. A 4 mana 1+1/+1 lifelink aura is not a card you would play, and you kind of said this is a bad card. You only needed like the pre-release to understand that you're wrong, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you come back on the next, but it's not just that. It's not like you went to a pre-release and someone beat you with Hopeful Eidolon. You're like, oh, I must have been wrong. I'm just going to start playing it now. It was that you recognized that, oh, having a cheap 1/1 to bestow upon is really important in this format. Or having a 1/1 lifelink left behind when your first huge creation that you created is destroyed, that you can build onto again with the bestow is really important. That this is a Voltron format where you're making huge beasts. And in a world like that, giving an 8/8 and making it a 9/9 lifelink is actually super relevant, right?
Yep.
And so anyway, I could go on. There were all these reasons that you had, but it wasn't just that you went and you lost to this card and you got results oriented and said, well, it must be good. It's that the context of how you lost and the context of seeing it in its environment allowed you to properly adjust your assessment based on new reasons that you could articulate and explain, not just that this result happened, so I'm going to shift now.
Right. Yeah, that is we try to hammer that home on the set reviews as well, that this is a starting point, for our listeners. William Barley says, hi, Ryan. As a relatively new player, I've found tools like the vanilla test to be super helpful for evaluating new cards that I encounter. I know you developed this tool some time ago, however, and I'd be curious to hear whether your approach for evaluating new cards has shifted over time, and if it has, what type of stuff precipitated these changes?
As I've said in a couple other questions, I do think that the tools that you've been using for the whole run of the show are largely still applicable, and part of that is their flexibility. We're not telling you removal is good. We're trying to give you tools to assess removal, right? And those tools haven't changed, even if the card quality or the nature of the things you're assessing change. The vanilla test is still, I'm really proud of that one. It's funny. It's like it's jumped into Hearthstone and other games. I think, when I'm off this earth, if people are still talking about the vanilla test, it might be my we've
hit your legacy, yeah.
Right. But the origin story is kind of interesting on that. I've told the story of how how Aaron Forsyth, the director of Magic R&D, before I was an employee or before I'd even met him, became an acquaintance of mine through fantasy sports, and he shipped when I told him I wanted to run a sealed league at my game development work, where we had 100+ gamers. He said he shipped me a bunch of Morningtide Lorwyn product to run sealed. So my buddy Dave Webb was relearning Magic and building his deck, and I was kind of the guy helping everybody with their cards. And I was looking through Dave's deck. It had red in it, and he was playing some really weak stuff in this red deck. And I was looking through his sideboard, and he had a Lowland Oaf in his sideboard, which is, let me look it up here to get the exact text. So mainly, though, it's a 3/3.
You could just ask
Luis.
He just knows all these things. But
Lowland Oaf is 3 and a red for a 3/3. It has tap. Target goblin creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains flying until end of turn. Sacrifice that creature at end of turn. And I asked him why he wasn't playing it, and he plainly explained that he didn't have any goblins in his deck. And that was the moment where I put my thumb over the rules text and said, "Now look at this card." And he saw that it was, it's a 3/3 for a 4, and there's no drawback to it. And the vanilla test was born on that day. And it's funny because it's kind of evolved to become more of a way to say what is an acceptable set of stats given this format. And I think it is a useful tool. But it started out as a way to say, don't get hung up on the rules text, because people do get seriously hung up on the rules text to the point that it can obscure how they think about the power and toughness. Another funny example, Aaron Forsyth once famously at WotC designed quickly just two cards. One was a 4 and a G for a 4/4, and then one was a 4G 4/5 with the ability tap, you lose the game. And so he took this 4/4 4G vanilla and this 4/5 4G with the ability tap, you lose the game around to people, and asked which of these cards do you like? Which would you play? And many people chose the 4/4. They did not want a 4/5 that had a negative ability on it.
Right.
Were they fearing Mindslaver? I don't know. It's I doubt it. So the point is, people get fixated on the words, and it can override their assessment of the numbers. And Dave Webb doing that with Lowland Oaf was the origin of the vanilla test. And I love how it is a good litmus test. Like what passes in this format says a lot about it. In fact, I think one of the more interesting questions for any given format is a grizzly bear good here? You know, is it 2/2 for 2 something that I'm playing as many as I can get? I won't play any of them, or something in between. You know, a great, you know, back in the Zendikar block days, you went from Zendikar where you literally just wanted as many on color 2/2, you know, 2-power 2-cost creatures you could get, and then you go into Rise of the Eldrazi where they were just utterly unplayable. And so
Glory Seeker,
the vanilla test is not about some abstract, we can tell you before you go into the format whether this is acceptable or not, but a way to remind yourself to start with the base stats and then to look at it for the format. So yeah, I think
still in heavy rotation to this day, by the way.
These tools are these tools are good. You know, the LR toolbox, the hammer and the screwdriver, you know, you still need it 7 years later. It's just the cards change, but the tools you use to evaluate them stay the same.
Yeah. Jason Lee says, "Hi Ryan, do you regret the curse that this podcast has become?" Well then, he says, "You host the show and have never since played competitive Magic. John co-hosts the show and now calls himself a washed-up C-list Magic celebrity. Brian co-hosted the show, now just plays Hearthstone. LSV currently co-hosts the show and hasn't top-aided a PT in months," which I guess is technically true. He says, "Are you comfortable with Marshall leaving the tattered ruins of so many livelihoods in his wake?"
Yes.
Next question is Jesse Calavato says, "Ryan, how did you get your job at Wizards? And I'm sure most of us here would dream to work there." Wow, it says LSV being one of them. Well, that's very presumptive. And did you have anything to do with Wiley Bandar? Jesse kind of peppered us with a wide range there. But maybe, you know, how did you get your job at Wizards is the thrust of it there?
Sure. Let's see. Well, you can go listen to episode 85, actually. If you
can give us a Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Notes. But if you want the full story, I believe I tell it on 85. But basically, I got into game design in my late 20s through sheer force of will. I left a job I wasn't happy with and read a book called What Color is Your Parachute that really helped me understand that you can understand what your passions are and understand what your marketable skills are, find the overlap in the Venn diagram, and there are jobs there. And I did that. And I was looking at a couple different places I could take that philosophy, and basically talked my way into a job as the writer of the manuals, the copywriter for the Hoyle products, because they had these are PC games, you know, Hoyle Poker, Hoyle Casino, Hoyle card games, that kind of thing. And to make the box heavy, they would have a big strategy guide in there. So I got it. I broke into the biz by showing that I knew my stuff. I actually wrote this essay on the difference between hearts and spades and which you'd recommend for a dinner party with people who never played either game before. And I just crushed it, and they hired me. And like a lot of industries, just once you can get in the door, you can start to move in whatever direction you can demonstrate competence in. And that's basically, so I went from technically not being hired as a designer, but demonstrated that that was something I could do, started doing that. And then even as in my early stages there, I was like, well, here I am, I'm developing digital card games for my career now. Surely I can leverage this into some kind of Wizards job. Magic Online was active then. This was really at the start of Magic Online. It's like, and I even thought at the time, that could be a way in. I bet I would be able to do some of that work. And basically that's what happened. The part of as Marshall has said, part of doing the show was to maybe try and get a little exposure or get my name known. The irony is that really didn't do, like, nobody I interviewed with at Wizards of the Coast had listened to a single episode of Limited Resources. not one.
That's great.
we have that in common.
Yeah. That's gas.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
even the people I interview to come on the show don't listen to it. So.
Right. But that wasn't the point. It was that it was there on my, like, I could talk to it. It demonstrated my passion that I was taking this seriously enough to go out into the world and try and create content around this game. And then so while nobody I interviewed with listened, how it did end up helping was that a couple of employees at Wizards became big fans of the show and reached out to and sent email to the show saying, hey, and mentioned that they work for Wizards. So that when I did apply, I wrote back to those guys and said, hey, just so you know, I have applied for this position and this position, if you want to throw in a good word for me. And they did. And honestly, that's the willingness to reach out to someone who's reached out to you and at least let them know and maybe get a good word is a big part of how I think it happened, because that got me so that HR wanted to talk to me. That, like, once you've done something so that the company will reach out and spend an hour talking to you on the phone, then it's up to you. At that point,
yeah,
that's the break you're looking for, because at that point you need to impress the person you're talking to, and then you need to impress the next person you're talking to. But getting that foot in, getting that start of that chain is the tricky part. And so in my career, I've done that through aggressive searching of job listings, finding things that I could write an awesome cover letter for and say, hey, this is what I'm good at, and convince people that they should at least give you a listen and hear what you have to say and give you an interview. At the end of the day, I would attribute most of my whatever success I've had in my career to communication. I've been
your writing was awesome at the time too. The stuff you were doing, I'm sure that they had seen some of that.
Probably not, but it didn't matter, because the point is I can communicate well in those spots, and I can't overemphasize the importance of strong communication skills when you're trying to convince someone to give you money to do something for them.
Yeah, especially when it involves more communicating.
And Wiley Bandar? No, not me.
Yeah. Nicholas Weber says, hi, Ryan. I'm new to the podcast, so I don't know. What are your favorite draft formats? Have they changed much?
Let's see. That's a great question. Some of my old favorites are still current favorites. I will draft Rise of the Eldrazi whenever it's available on Magic Online. There's ones that are all the obvious ones, but let me think about ones that maybe less so, like or controversial ones. Like I really loved Zendikar draft, triple Zendikar, and would play that again, because it is such a shakeup. There has never been a faster, more aggressive limited format, and I think it's a fun exercise to shift your brain into that mode. And a lot of people said that made the format not very skill testing, because you just did whatever, you just draft the bears and attack. But I thought it created a new level of, well, okay, I know people understand this. What am I doing to get my damage through? How am I outdrafting my opponents, given that knowledge, to take on this unique twist to a limited format? So I actually like that, I think, a lot more than a lot of people.
You a cube guy?
Yeah, cube is my favorite format. I have 3 cubes. I have made paper versions of the vintage cube, the legacy cube, and the modern cube that were on Magic Online. And that's
sick.
That is
a lot of cubes.
And man, they're a pain to build. But they're classically this project that, like, at the beginning, I'm all gung ho and this will be easy. And then, by sleeving card number 500 with still 40 more to go that I haven't found yet, I'm just like, I want to lie down and sleep
on a bed of Magic cards. We know.
Yeah. So I think, my favorite format is cube, and in the right measure, vintage cube. I think it's really fun to draft broken stuff and storm decks, but it wouldn't be my. I don't want that to be a steady diet, but I love that. I think the most fun I've had drafting has been with the sweetest of vintage cube games.
All right. We covered this. I just wanted to open it up in case there was anything else you wanted to add. But Matt Schneevi says, "Hey, you're one of the few people I know who succeeded in getting his dream job. What advice or warnings or warnings do you have for others who aspire to attain their dream job?" I think you gave some good advice about the networking and stuff. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add to that, or any warnings? Does it kill it?
The warning is that it's still a job, right? But no, it doesn't kill it. Like, I still love what I'm doing. I think Magic is the best game, and I get to work on it every day, and that's pretty sweet. And yeah, I think I basically answered the how to get there question before, and that's understand your skill set, understand your passions, and look into the industries of your passion and figure out how they need your skill set.
Yeah, but I like what you said. You found what position, you weren't just saying what you wanted to do vaguely. Like, you were saying, I want to be, this is the position that I want to hold at a company. Right. And that's kind of a different thing than being like, I want to be a game designer. It's a little bit vague, right? Like, there's a lot of different types of games. There's a lot of different facets to design. I think if you can narrow it down a little bit to something more specific, that probably benefits you.
It does, in terms of having a long-term target or something you're working towards. But at the beginning, it would not have helped me to say to myself, I want to work in Magic R&D. I'm going to go knock on that door.
No, it would have, though, because you can make a path to that, right?
Right. I'm saying for setting up your long-term plan, it is. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but starting with, I just need to get into game design, was the right first step. It's like, if my dream job is designing Magic cards in Wizards R&D or working on digital Magic for WotC, what are the steps to get there? But if you reverse engineer that, it comes back to, how are you breaking into this industry? If you are interested in industry, you can usually find people to talk to give you different ways to think about getting in. Like game design, I don't think I've talked to a game designer who made it into the industry in exactly the same way. Although I will say that for that specifically, there are not just college courses, but there are colleges that are just, how to make games.
Yeah.
So you can absolutely study that kind of thing specifically, but in a more general sense, more abstract dream job of whatever your dream job is. Yeah, it starts with identifying what it is, and then figuring out how your skill set meshes successfully with that industry, and relentlessly looking for the way in. I think the step a lot of people just don't do is the looking. If you've established that your dream job is working for Disney on something, are you checking Disney's job listings literally every week? Or because if you're not really serious.
Right.
If you're serious about doing this, you need to actually put in the effort and time to to run down those leads and to be constantly checking for them, because opportunity sometimes knocks, but I've found that opportunity is better chased.
Couple more questions for you, Ryan. Matthew Taylor says, "Hello, Ryan. As a relatively new listener, I'm excited to have the opportunity to get the take of the original co-host." Matthew actually has 3 questions, but one we've already answered, so I'm going to do 2 of them. One, it's been a number of years since you left LR for WotC. Is there anything that, in retrospect, you think you had wrong, or in which your opinion has evolved on with regards to limited Magic? Is there any advice you used to give that you now think, that was actually wrong? Or are there aspects of limited play that you once overlooked, but now you think are important for players to consider?
That's a great question. I'm not in touch enough with the exact content of early LR to have
I can't even remember
to
it.
that. I know that there are things when I do listen, I get really nervous. Like sometimes I'll for one reason or other, I'll go back and listen to some part of an old episode, and I'm ready to jump on old Ryan with new Ryan knowledge and say, what was he thinking? But so far that hasn't happened. Again, I think mostly the tools are solid. I bet I could come up with some if I listened to a bunch of shows.
I think that the answer is no, right? I mean, I think that Matthew wants to know if there's something that you're just like, man, I can't believe I was telling people to not play these cards all these years, and now that's different. That isn't the case, though.
No, although it does remind me that when Luis posted the looting question,
his infamous looter article,
it was just for science.
Yeah, just for science. There was a lot of different science happening there, but I believe you that there was definitely science.
God, don't believe him for a minute. He knew exactly what he was doing when he posted that thing.
Yeah. Well, and but
he just wants to see it burn, man.
Right. Well, mostly when you conduct an experiment, you are pretty sure of how it's going to turn out, actually. So I think it was still science.
Yeah, let's just say it was a success.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
It reminded me of how I think it was just like our 3rd episode where we went off on looting and how people wouldn't loot because they were happy. They were just generally happy with their hand, and how that didn't make sense to us. And so when Luis posted that, I was like, oh, I hope he's on my side. It's like, I wonder, because I get nervous when like we did start the show with no credentials, right? Like there was.
Oh yeah, zero.
From episode 1, we had to explain why anybody should want to listen to us at all, and basically it was, hey, look, I've been playing for a while, and my advice worked for Marshall. It'll probably work for you too, right? That was kind of our initial pitch, but when I hear the opinion of a Magic player I respect, or Luis, who I know is better than me, I'm worried. I'm hoping that I'm on the same page with that person. So I just was really, really happy. Like, okay, good. Luis is on the Always Loot team.
Well, but you remember way, way, way back when he did a video, and you commented on it?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that?
No. Oh yeah,
he didn't loot, and you called him out, and he said, "You're right."
Oh really?
Yeah. Wow, I can't believe you forgot that. That's unreal. You were so excited about it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah, Luis punted. It was pretty sweet.
I believe it.
Yeah.
He's clearly recovered since, though. So we trained him up.
Yeah. The other question Matthew had, really just uncalled for. He says, "Do you have any embarrassing Marshall stories that you can share?"
That last clause is probably the one that makes it toughest.
I have one. Do you remember when you poured frozen water in my ear?
What?
You literally, you actually did this.
We call that ice, by the way.
To Jay and I. No, it was still in liquid form. You actually did this to Jay and I.
Well,
because it messes with only half of your equilibrium.
Oh, right. Yes.
I mean, this is I was in junior high or something, but that actually happened.
That's funny. I definitely used you and Jay for various experimenting.
Yeah, it was bad.
Again, for science.
Yeah, but we trusted you. So last question. Simon says, hi, Ryan. I started listening to LR just before LSV joined as a co-host. I was wondering if you listen to the podcast at all. If so, what do you like or dislike about the current setup of the show? And then he's got a follow-up question I'll ask you after.
I listen regularly. In fact, the absolute worst part of this appearance for me is that I don't get a new LR this week.
Oh, yeah. Robbery.
I'm going to be waking up tomorrow and go into my podcast app and hitting refresh and being like, oh, yeah, wait. So, yes, I still listen to the show every week. It's been a great source of pride and happiness for me to see Marshall build it with the co-hosts over time, adding things. Let's see, some of my favorite additions are the sign-off. I love, I think a lot of people may not know where the sign-off came from and what the first one was, which was just, and this is so classic
so
John,
stupid,
right?
yeah.
It's just so classic John, is that John was a little annoyed that you always got the last word.
That was all it was.
That's all it was. He was just like, dang it, Marshall always has the last word on the show, so this episode, I'm going to wait till he's done, and then what did he say?
He said something like, "That's it for the upkeep. We'll see you on the next untap," or some stupid little catchphrase.
Right.
It's like, what the hell was that?
It was just John inserting himself to make sure he got equal time there, and it evolved into this amazing part of the show that I'm always very impressed with the co-hosts that I feel like it's non-0% that John and Brian stopped doing the show because the pressure of the
they ran out of sign-offs. Yeah,
the sign-off pressure was too high. So,
yeah, it's funny because I had a talk with Luis about it. It's actually a really serious thing because, like, I told Luis when he came on, look, these are optional. Like, these are things that John and Brian love to do, but like, I don't want to hoist it on my co-hosts that they have to come, because sometimes it's harder to come up with that than it is the actual content for the show itself. And I didn't want Luis stressing out about it. He's been a real trooper. And I think that Luis's take has been really cool too. He's not as much of a showman as those guys. I think Luis has done it perfectly in that I love the hilarious stuff that Brian and John both did, but I think it's important to be able to sustainability is key in these things. And I love that Luis has found things like recipes, which, by the way, like I said, I'm cooking a lot more these days, and we're trying out the recipes we hear. I'm getting a cast iron skillet just so we can make good steak.
There we go.
And having a go-to like that, like, I think, Luis, that if you don't have anything clever this week, tell us a recipe, and having easy outs like that, I think, is key to being able to withstand that pressure. But I do love that came about.
It could be argued I never have anything clever, but
I'm not going to make that argument. I think because you're clever when you feel it, right? Like, when you have clever, you do clever. But I love that you don't put the pressure on yourself to be amazingly clever it doesn't have to be clever every time, right? And I think that's what is making it work. It doesn't have to be clever, it just has to be compelling, and I think it has been compelling every time, despite not necessarily meeting some clever bar. And that's just one that stands out to me. I think taking the crack a pack to the crack a draft is cool. The
people really like those.
Yeah, it's tougher to do, but it's totally worth doing once a set, I think, at least. The Sunset Show, I think, is one of the best things that John brought to it, to limited resources, because I think there's the way in which, like, some people might think, oh, there's a Rise of the Eldrazi flashback draft on Magic Online this week. I'm going to go back and listen to the Rise of the Eldrazi set review, and I'm going to be totally prepared, right? Mm-hmm. And it's no, don't do that. Don't do that. As we said, like, that's when we're wrong. That's when we are. That's when we're finding our way, and there's going to be some good data there, but I love that the Sunset Show becomes a really good place to, like, if you wanted to go back in the past to prepare for some older format, that's the show to listen to. So I love that exists in the repertoire now.
Is there anything that makes you just go, why are they still talking about this? Or Why is this still a thing? Or did you ever yell at your phone?
I yell. All the time.
I mean, you usually just give us this feedback directly, but I figured,
right.
You can air it out here if you want.
Well, I had mentioned, like, I don't know, it's little things like, the 5-drops, overvaluing 5-drops in common 5-drops in set reviews. Like, I think most common 5-drops tend to end up being like D pluses.
They're all interchangeable whatevers.
They're all interchangeable whatevers, and they're not realistically Cs. But then we're getting to the nitpicking or whatever, but yes, but I think that's what listeners do too, right? I mean, there's a way in which we're all coming to, and me too at this point. I am coming to the show to get a leg up, and it's entertaining, but also because I do want to hear what you guys have to say about the new set, because it informs my Mitgo pre-release. Like, the most competitive thing I do is informed by this show. I'm just another one in the crowd disagreeing when I disagree, and that's part of the fun of it all.
Yeah, it is. The show definitely serves as a conversation starter on many levels. The last point there from Simon was, if we were to do a Let's Stump Spain, so LSV, Let's Stump Vargas, this is your version, what pack do you think would be your strongest and your weakest?
I think that's a relative thing, and that most of them would be pretty weak. I'm nowhere near the I just don't think I could do it as well as Luis.
I don't think people quite grasp. Like, I actually was like, oh no, because Owen came in and just trounced Luis, just left him in the dust, no mercy whatsoever. And the problem is that these are the two. Like, these are my top 2 picks for this game in the world, right? Like, I think people just think like, oh, well, Owen was a little better. Maybe Luis was a little off that day. And I'm telling you, if we put a normal, very smart Magic playing human into this game, they just get destroyed by it. And, they'd be getting 2 or 3 cards rather than 13 or 12. But it's hard to convey because Luis is, he's consistently good at it. Maybe we'll put. I'll make myself do one or something, and you'll see how bad it is.
But I think my best would probably be Odyssey or Ravnica, City of Guilds, because those were just Odyssey is where I just really discovered limited, as a serious thing, because it was the first limited format available on Magic Online, and that was the first time really anybody could suddenly draft a thing 50 times if they wanted, right? And especially when it was in beta and I wasn't paying to do it, I drafted the heck out of Odyssey. So I probably am pretty good with Odyssey, and Triple Ravnica was also one of my all-time favorites, and so I'd probably be pretty good at that. But okay. I was saying, I was on the design team for Born of the Gods and the development team for Fate Reforged, and I'd probably lose on those too.
Because you'd get all the names mixed up with the playtest names and stuff.
I mean, if you did a Born of the Gods Crack-a-Pack and the rare was Chromanticore, I'm not sure I could say.
You made that card.
I know, but it's got some abilities on it. It's like, I don't know, flying, trample.
I'm not making you do this. All right. Yeah, so it is a tougher game than it seems.
Oh yeah, it's and people who play along at home and pause. I wonder how they do. I don't even bother because it's just like, I don't know that. I don't know that one. Oh, no. Naturalize. I know that.
Yeah, you get the staples. Yep. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the show this week. Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time to come back. Obviously, this won't be the last time that you're on LR, but it is always such a pleasure to have you come back and get back to the roots here on a thing that you had such a huge influence on back in the day when we started it.
It's so great to be here. Love being on the air again, and thank you so much for having me.
Where can people find you, just if they want to, kind of keep up with what you're up to, at Wizards or whatever?
Mostly you're going to find me on Twitter. I'm at Ryan Spain. I just got my name. That's pretty sweet.
Ooh.
Although, honestly, at this point, I mostly post snarky stuff about politics. So I'm sure I'm like shedding Magic player followers by the dozen at this point. But if you want to say hi or see what I have to think about the political landscape, you can find me on Twitter. That's
I'm
kind of
sure
it.
you think it's great right now.
Oh, it's everything I dreamed. Some dreams are nightmares.
Oh, there's a hint.
Yeah.
But so Ryan Spain on Twitter.
Yep, Ryan Spain on Twitter. That's really, I mean, come on. I'm not that, and whenever I show up on this show again.
Okay. So they can wait otherwise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ryan, for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Of course, the show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. We don't want to forget that. They're the place to go to get everything you need Magic related, including limited resources gear. This is something we could not do when the show first came out, but thanks to, in part to our partnership with channelfireball.com, you can get limited resources, deck boxes, and sleeves, even t-shirts at channelfireball.com. And they're nice. They're cool. They're made by Ultra Pro, and you can kind of, represent that value flag and pick some of that stuff up while you're there getting your singles or sealed product or whatever else you need. And don't forget, of course, you can sell cards back to them. They will give you a 30% bonus if you're trading them in for store credit, which is a great way to keep that magic circle of life flowing so that you can keep on playing. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. It has links for everything right on the front, including there's a link on lrcast.com that shows all of the previous co-hosts, including Ryan, with a little bio, so you can get a chance to get to know what Ryan's about. That's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week, though. See you then.
All right. My turn, I guess.
You're going to do the sign off, right?
I have a little sign off.
Well, he missed the window to do sign-offs, but now he finally gets a chance, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I get a shot. There's a lot of ways I could go with this, but really, there is one issue I had that I really needed to get it off my chest, but it's not important enough to be part of the main show. I want to defend the practice of sweating your rares in sealed.
This came up a while ago.
Yes. So ahead of one of the sealed episodes that Marshall and Luis did, I was talking to Marsh and we were talking about different aspects of it. And I floated the concept of not looking at your rares first when doing sealed deck. On Magic Online, it's particularly easy because you can, without looking at what you've opened, filter out your rares or mythics, and then just build as though you didn't have any good ones. And when I'm due employee pre-release, I will open the pack in the right way so that I can peel off the top couple cards and make sure I get the rare in it. And I put those aside. Not every time. I'm not. I want to be clear about a couple things. First, I don't do this every time because it adds some time to the process. So it has to be something you're feeling like doing. And I also want to observe, of course, we're going to look at every card we open and make a final decision about our deck based on every card we open. But the reason I suggested this to Marsh, and he mentioned it on air, and just destroyed by Luis. Just the disdain with which Luis regarded this suggestion was quite clear, and I wanted to at least express where I was coming from, and that is that I do think really newer players eagerly look at their rares and can sometimes marry them in the same way that you can marry a first pick rare. It's usually correct. I acknowledge that it is almost always correct to play some of your powerful rares. What I like about it is that it encourages a newer player to assess the depth of their colors before clouding their head with the excitement about whatever rare they open. And I think you'll get better practice because if you look at your rares and open 3 sick black rares, well, you're playing black. And if your goal is expediting your deck building, that's fine. You're going to understand black as a color and you're going to try and work that out. But if you force yourself to wait, you're going to assess all your colors and get a much better handle on the format. And one of the listeners was asking, how do I get better practice in with fewer reps and less time? Well, that's things like this can do that because you're you're now really taking a look at green, and you hadn't before, and now you wouldn't have if you'd seen all those amazing rares. For the experienced player, the reason I do it is because of this is again a poker term, is the sweat. Whether it's kind of a gambling term when you don't know the outcome of something and you have a vested interest in it, and you kind of have a rooting interest in the result, and that feeling of waiting for that result is the sweat. And I love the rare sweat in sealed because it's like knowing what you want for Christmas instead of just before you open the presents. And so I look, and whenever I do this, by the way, and somebody sees at the table, suddenly everybody at the table is watching me build my deck and waiting for me to look. They're all waiting for the Christmas of me looking at my rares too. And I love okay, I've got deep red and deep blue, so I really want red and blue rares. I have 3 white cards that are even playable, so there's no white rare that could even, if I got a white Planeswalker, I'm not playing it. And then with that knowledge, going in and flipping up the rares and having either the fist pump moment of all your rares being on color, or the wah wah of you were rooting for red and black and instead you got these white cards you're not going to play. So that is my pitch for the rare sweat sealed approach.
Luis, does it resolve?
I usually think I am pretty open-minded when it comes to a lot of this stuff. There are very few moments in the show where I actually dismissed what Marshall was saying, and this was one of them. I was just like, I am not buying this. This is just nonsense, and I still think it is. Look, I get the sweat. I like gambling. I like slow rolling. I like, I like figuring out, like, like flipping over your card later. That's cool. I understand that. I look at my rare last sometimes when I like open a booster pack, right? In a draft. But this I think is like actively harmful for building your sealed deck. Like trying to pretend like how you'd build it without the rares is just like not an actual thing. So
you're so wrong about this. You really are. This is you hanging around with pros too long. You haven't watched an inexperienced sealed pool builder build a deck in a while, because what they do is they take their rare and then they jam every crappy on color card so that they can play their rare, even if it's wrong.
It has been a couple years since we watched your deck building at the GP.
Come on, man. You guys both were within 1 card of my build. You can't throw that at me.
Who's defensive now? Okay, you did build that deck well. But
yes.
My point is that sealed, and maybe this is Ryan's fault. I don't know. He works at Wizards. Sealed is just driven by rares so much now that you just can't build without the rares.
Yeah.
But we're coming off of Kaladesh, Ether Revolt sealed.
Yeah, this isn't the best timing for this discussion.
You just look at your rares and decide, how am I going to play these games?
Yeah,
so
that part is, I will give you that one. The timing of our argument's not great.
That's more boring. Let's just agree that it comes down to, again, like I said, life is a time to happiness resource conversion game, and if I have found optimal strategies in the rare sweat and Luis has not, then maybe we're both doing the time to happiness game correctly.
Yeah, I think we can just agree that your method is fine as long as like winning isn't one of your priorities.
Wow. If you
You probably shouldn't try to recover from that one, right?
Luis, if you don't
I was hoping to get the last word there.
Yeah.
Luis, if you don't have the strength and fortitude to overcome your assessment of your non-rares, like if you think that's going to cloud your judgment, I understand. You better do it your way, because I don't want your EV to go down. I can handle it though, so I'm going to keep rare sweating.